Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and get more information, listen to previous shows at our website, which is behind me, blainsworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Jessica Ayala. Close enough for work on that?
You got it. You got
Ayala,
it. It's perfect.
you're very generous about that. Author and publisher of Stroll, Biltmore Forest, and the Ramble magazine. And for being my guest today, she's also, as you'll see in just a second, author. And Jessica, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. It's a big wave.
Hi.
That is Jessica. And Jessica, as you'll see, is this amazing woman who I've known for a bunch of years. I
hmm
actually kind of worked for you at one time when you were publishing a magazine in Biltmore Lake. You let me do, I was writing a humor column for you, so thank you for that. But
Absolutely.
Jessica is the author now of a new book, The Five Laws of Stillness, A Rebel's Guide to Spiritual Unfoldment. I love that. Can you show, do you have the book in front of you? I don't
I
have it
do.
with me.
Yeah.
Show it to you. Okay, I love it. The love that title. A book offering revolutionary perspectives on stillness, not as the absence of movement, but as a distinctive consciousness essential to spiritual growth. Residing in Huntsville, she is a loving wife and devoted mother of two, balancing her entrepreneurial endeavors as the publisher of a local magazine, Stroll, Biltmore Forest, and the Ramble, and branding specialist for small businesses with a passion for community and spiritual leadership. And you also told me off the air that you also bake bread. Is that a sourdough
I
bread?
do. I bake sourdough bread. Yeah.
And you bake it, do you sell it?
I don't sell it. No, I don't sell it. I don't have that much passion for it, passion or
Okay.
time for it.
But I'm
We too make
disappointed.
it for our family.
You didn't bring any for me to have some now. I'd love to have some sour bread. And the only thing I'm missing, Jessica, in talking with you is I don't see your roller skates behind you, in terms of doing all these different things. Do you have a pair of roller skates or
I have a pair of rollerblades, actually.
oh, okay, rollerblades. So
I do. Yeah.
now I know how you get from one place to another.
That's
As a
right. Just
kid,
zipping around.
as a kid, you grew up where?
I grew up in a lot of places. I'm from Texas originally, south of Houston. And then I moved around quite a bit when I was younger. Lived in small towns in Texas, Alabama, Chattanooga. Knoxville is where I went to school, middle school and high school, and then moved back to Texas and then to Nashville, Tennessee. And then now I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Actual North Carolina. So as a kid growing up, did you know you want to do all these different things? Or as a kid, what do you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, I wanted to explore, I think. I don't know that I really thought about a specific thing. I know one of the shows I've done with you, one of the interviews I've done with you, I said I wanted to be a pirate, which was true. I wanted to explore. I wanted to be on to be a pirate at one point in my life. I thought about being a teacher. I thought about being a doctor and um, a
Well,
psychologist, being in the psychology field.
well, I
So many
guess the
different things.
pirate thing you could achieve at Halloween, I guess, or just did you ever dress up as a pirate?
Sure did.
Oh,
And
did you
dressed
really?
my son up as a parrot too. And that was a great costume.
Okay, I can imagine. So you got to achieve
hmm
that goal a little bit. But I guess I got to know you through your writing. And so how did you get to start to become a writer?
So I've actually always written. When I was younger, I was always gravitating towards spiritual literature. So um, I loved reading wisdoms and philosophies from different eras and cultures. I gravitated toward it. And I would actually reflect on my journals. So a lot of my early writing were journal entries. I would just sit down and explore my thoughts and my inner world, and I would relate it to wisdoms that I was reading. And I just kind of did that in the quietude of my room and in my space. So that's where my writing actually began.
Well, let me ask you too, in terms of writing. So when you were younger, did you have any writing? Was it ever published anywhere, or when was the first time you got published?
Um, this is it. Yeah, this book is my first
Well, no, the
published work.
magazine though. We'll talk about the
Oh, the
magazine.
magazine. So the magazine is I actually did not do a lot of writing in the magazine. So the magazine that I own is a private neighborhood magazine, which you're familiar with when you lived in Biltmore Lake, and that's one of the publications I owned. I now work with Biltmore Forest and the Ramble. And what's really neat about those publications is that they're actually neighborhood content. So residents write the articles. So you were amazing in contributing your humor piece, and that was from you. And I just kind of compiled it and put it together each month with other neighborhood content. But with that specifically, I didn't really write a whole lot. I just wrote like my publisher's note, and I still write my publisher's note, and then I help to edit. That's
Right.
the job there is
Well,
editing.
but I always see the publisher's note. What gave you the idea to start these neighborhood magazines?
So I started with this company back, it's been 12 years, and it was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I had just graduated. No, I had a year left in college. And I actually found a post on Craigslist that was back in the day when Craigslist was a safe place to find people to to work with. And I remember I called and I answered this um, this post, and I met with the people there who are running Bell Meads publication, which is again a neighborhood in Nashville, Tennessee. And I just remember loving the idea of this publication that goes to a specific neighborhood, and it really consists of neighborhood content and things happening in the community only, not generic content. I really loved that. So I I interviewed, I got the job, I got the position. But what was interesting is I had just had my son. My son was a month old. I don't know. It was one of those moments where I was like, I can do anything. I need to take on more things right now. I have my newborn and I need to, also be doing this, this, and this. And so it was a month after my son was born. I went to the gentleman that hired me and I said, you know what? I can't do this right now. This is not the right time. Like it is not in order for me to start this business. And so he was like, if anything changes, let me know. And I thought about this publication, the specific um, program for a year. And it was a year later that I reached out to him and I was like, I am in a place where I'm absolutely ready to do this work. I just think I just thought it was such a cool idea. And so that's when it started. And that was 12 years ago.
And so you didn't have prior to that, you didn't have a journalism background per se?
Mm-mm. Nope. I was in school for psychology and I bartended, and that was that. Although I've always been drawn to an element of the publication is of course sales. And so I've always been drawn to that, like marketing, branding. I now have a side business that's branding as a branding strategist. So I'm working with small businesses to help them create a brand for themselves, which ultimately is like a story, to embrace the story of how they became business owners and how they have this business. So that's that's where that has evolved into.
I love how you say that you have a side business. So
Yeah.
I'm doing 27 other things. There's a 28th thing you do now too, but very, very cool. So all of a sudden then, Jessica, you've been doing this all these different years. When did the idea come to write a book?
So, yes. So the book actually started to manifest in 2019. So I had already been in this business for years, as a magazine owner and publisher. And in 2019, I was at a rock bottom place. I kind of had what I call a dark night of the soul, where I had been struggling for about a year and a half after my youngest son was born. So my youngest son was born in 2017. And for a year and a half, what I can say is that I was really experiencing, I think, like undiagnosed postpartum depression. I was in a deep fog. I was in a rock bottom where I felt so overwhelmed by all the things that were out of my control and external obligations. And I just felt pulled in all these different directions. And it's interesting saying this now because we've already kind of touched on all these different passions, all these different things I like to do and I integrate into my life. But what I experience now when it comes to integrating the things that I love is very different than what I was experiencing in 2019. In 2019, I was just overwhelmed and I didn't know how to find balance and I didn't know how to turn toward what I love. I was more so just being pulled and pushed um by obligations. And so I hit a rock bottom and I just kind of had this moment of awakening where I thought, I am done living this way. I just am done being anxious. I'm done being overwhelmed. And I don't want to experience this in my life. And I don't want to um, give this energy or transfer this energy of franticness and anxiousness and stress onto my kids. And so I hit this moment in my life where it was just a turning point for me. And this book actually began as an exploration of spiritual truths that I had picked up along my life, my early years. And I wrote it for myself. It started out as like writing like journal entries. Basically, I was exploring all the things that I was going through and what I was feeling, and I was relating it to spiritual wisdom. And then it turned into a workshop, actually. And then from a workshop, it turned into a book.
You mentioned workshop. How so?
So when I began writing it out, and I was kind of categorizing these ideas, the 5 laws of stillness, which is what the book is called, and I I mean, I just wrote it out as a workshop. I just began looking at it and I was able to kind of, I don't really know how to explain that, how to categorize these spiritual truths and the practices that could go along with them. And then it just opened its way as a workshop. So I actually did a workshop on this book, on this content back in 2021, early that year. And I was just like, let me just see how it goes and what the response is. And it was really great.
Because as you're speaking, Jessica, I'm coming up with another assignment for you, and that is that this would seems to be like it would be a good book for a lot of people, but also in terms of participating in the seminar with you or a workshop, or have you done that at all? In terms of people come and hear you talk about this?
I have not, I have done it. It's funny because I did a workshop before the book was published, and then I just published the book recently, and I will be doing a workshop soon. Um, it is in the works. I just need to pinpoint a date with the facility that I'm
Because
hosting
it
with.
seems something that so many people could use,
Mhm.
and that you kind of articulated it, but a lot of people just kind of deal with it and then just, like you said, get to that point, but never get past that point. So the
Mhm.
book actually helped you get past that point?
It does. It does. So the book in and of itself is not, this is what's really unique about the book is most people, when they think about stillness, they think of it as a physicality. They think of it as something that they have to do, right? So the modern day definition of stillness is to have solitude, silence, to be motionless, to be fixed. It's actually to be fixed, quiet, calm, and silent. That's the modern day definition of stillness. Well, when I was going through that dark night of the soul in 2019, I encountered something that I had never encountered before. Or I encountered an awareness of something that it just kind of came to me. And I think before I share that awareness, I need to back up a little bit, if that's okay, and
Sure.
just share kind of my upbringing a little bit. So when I was young, I was actually had a really unique and special introduction to spirituality from at a very young age. I One of my early memories is my grandmother's. I gained a great reverence for like angels, saints, and Our Lady Guadalupe, our Mother Mary. Like I gained a great reverence for that. One of my grandmothers would do energetic cleansings on me as a kid. She wouldn't call it energy work, but that's what it was. It's called Olympia, and that's in Hispanic culture. Um, and then when I was about 11, I was introduced to metaphysical teachings. When I was 13, I attended my first Cherokee Sweat Lodge, and I was introduced to Native celebrations and ceremonies. And I had these very unique introductions as a child that really helped me to gravitate toward wanting to just know as much as I could about different spiritual ideas and practices and wisdoms. And that was always part of my like my journaling experience. That was always something I did for myself in the privacy of my bedroom and in my journal. That's just what really resonated with me. And so um even though I had those early introductions, however, I also experienced a life that was not um really the most peaceful. My early life had poverty, homelessness, physical violence, um, alcoholism. Like it was very unstable. And so I really juggled a lot with these two different worlds that I was experiencing. And so one of the things that came up for me in 2019 is that meditation, the practice of meditation or physical stillness, is something that I was able to do as a young adult and a teenager when I was introduced to the practice easily. And I was like, oh, anybody can meditate. I never understood why people would say, oh, I can't be physically still. I can't meditate. I'd be like, what do you mean? It's, just do it. And then you'll adjust to it. Right. But when I was experiencing this chaos in my life in 2019, I experienced two things that surprised me. The first is that I felt physically incapable of sitting in stillness, like in physical stillness. And I found it difficult to carve out time. I had two young kids. I had all these obligations and roles and businesses. And I just found it difficult. And then the second thing I experienced is that whenever I did find time to sit in quiet solitude or silence, I loved it. And the peace I gained was amazing, but it was short lived. Moments later, I'd be right back in the throes of life and experiencing the like being at the mercy of the world. And so at that time, I needed something more. I wanted to experience like stillness the way I had heard master teachers describe it, like Meister Eckhart, who says, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Um, I wanted to experience stillness in every moment. Bruce Lee has this really beautiful quote that says, the stillness in stillness is not the real stillness. Only when there is stillness and movement does the universe manifest. And so there's all these teachings. And I was like, I want stillness like that, not as a form. And so I discovered as I was looking into the etymology of stillness is that, again, our modern definition looks at it as a being still, quiet, calm, and silent. But early definitions of stillness it's actually related to order. The root stilni comes from in Pi, which is Proto-Indo-European, the single tongue that all modern Indo-European languages are derived from. Stillness actually means tranquility, rest, peace, and to stand, to put in place. It's actually related to establishing order
Oh,
in the
let me
moment.
jump in here a second, Jessica, just to ask you a couple of questions. That one, you just went through a bunch of things we said stillness meant.
Did.
Are those the five, are those the basis of the five principles we're going to be talking about?
That idea is the foundation of the five laws. Yes,
Yeah.
that stillness is a consciousness.
And something else you said, I was just wondering, you mentioned that, which is very unusual, that you're a 13-year-old, you're having these thoughts and you're thinking about it. And you wrote stuff down as a 13-year-old. Do you still have the stuff you wrote down as a 13-year-old?
I do.
Do you really?
I have all of my journals. Yeah. And they're amazing. Like I go back and read them and I'm like, wow, I was really going through some stuff.
Wow, is that
And
cool that you kept it? The
it is
now your children are how old?
7 and 12.
So are you encouraging the 12-year-old to journal?
Yeah. I talked to them a lot actually about journaling as a method of, yeah, it's awesome to have that available to look back on. Absolutely. But also in the moment, journaling is really good for creating space within. Like it brings clarity into the present moment.
But that's so cool because you're maybe one of the few people I've ever met who actually kept the journals, and can you imagine this will be the basis of another book or your life story told through the journals. I just love it. So I cut you off. So we're talking then about how this came about over the period of time. And then let's get back to 2019 or whatever the year was. When did it eventually come to you that you want to put this all together in a book?
It was just a gradual build. It became a book in, like I said, 2019. It was more so about just writing what I needed to know about dealing with the ebbs and flows of life, um, and learning and teaching myself how to navigate through the challenges and the obstacles in life, which doesn't happen. The realization I gained is that that doesn't happen by changing what's outside of myself. It's about having the grace and acceptance for the moment, regardless of what it looks like, and knowing that there's a solution always available. And so that is what it is to adopt a consciousness of stillness in a nutshell.
Let me ask you then, in terms of writing this, are you the type of writer, did you then get up every morning at 7 o'clock and write for 2 hours or 3 hours? Or how do you eventually take your ideas and put them into printed format?
4 a.m.
Did you really? I,
Mm-hmm.
I was not kidding you about that, but you actually
4
did.
a.m.
You did get up every morning at 4 a.m.
Yeah. I don't, I guess not every morning, but probably most mornings, 4 a.m.
You
writing.
set, you set an alarm,
Uh-huh.
and then you do
Good.
what you wrote for 2 hours, or how long did you write for?
So when I first started writing, actually, this is a great question for those who are considering to write.
Right.
When I began writing, or when I began this book, one of the things I did is I tried to will it into existence. The second that it came into my mind as a book, I was like, okay, yeah, let me do it. I'm going to do it by this date. I'm going to get it published by then. I'm going to wake up every morning. I'm going to devote the 2 hours, whatever it is. And so this is a big lesson. It's actually something I talk about in the book as well, because so often we want to do that when we get an idea and we get really excited about it. We're like, let me figure out how I'm going to make this happen. And we don't realize that we're part of something much greater than just ourselves. And when we have an idea, it's not just something we came up with. It's given to us. It's a opportunity to co-create. And the way that we do that is not by willing it into existence, but rather just turning toward it whenever we have those moments of insight and excitement about it. So, I guess to kind of touch on that a little further, when I first began writing, that's what I did. I was like, I'm going to do this at this time, all the time, whatever. And I got really burnt out. I got really burnt out because I was just trying to make it happen. And I had to take a break. And then when I finally returned to it, it was at a moment in time where I was like, I don't know, I was just I was at peace. I was in alignment with the timing of that return, so that whenever I did start to write it, I just was like, you know what? Let me just make this easy. Let me just wait until I start to get those moments of insight and wisdom, and then I'm going to sit down and write what comes to me. And what that began to look like actually is that I would wake up at like sometimes 2 or 3 or 4, and I would say, if I wake up at these times, I'm not going to stress myself about, oh, you're going to need more sleep or you need to go back to sleep, or whatever it is. I'm just going to go with it. And so some nights I woke up at like 2 and I would just write this idea that came to me in the middle of the night. And other times I would wake up at 4. But if I wasn't able to wake up at 4, I didn't stress about it. I was just like, you know what? Let me just capture with a pen and paper ideas that come to me throughout the day, and I'll get it into my book whenever I can.
It's interesting you're saying how you wrote it down. So you would actually write this down. You wrote it in longhand, and
I
then put
did.
it.
I mean, yeah, ideally I would type it out, but I carried a notebook with me and I would just write down notes in my phone. Or sometimes I would wake up at like, I mean, this still happens. Sometimes I wake up at 3 in the morning with an idea. I wake up, I grab my phone, I just record it into my phone, or I write it down real quickly and then I go back to sleep.
So how long did the whole thing take you?
Let's see. So 2019 began the kind of the journaling process. 2020 was huge for me. 2020 was so amazing. I had a really incredible, again, I write about it in the book, so you can just read the book on this, but an awakening moment in the middle of 2020 when everything was, I mean, we all know what happened that year. Um, But 2020 ended up being one of my most prosperous years financially and otherwise. And it was that year that I really began to kind of to begin writing, but it was also a great teaching moment because I was being called to write in 2020 while my heart, my soul was like, write this down, write these things down. While at the same time, my mind, my reasoning mind was like, you can't be writing. You need to work. We're in a pandemic. What are you thinking? And so I really spent, I mean, I know exactly the days. It was like June, July that I was like battling back and forth. I was like, but I want to write. I feel called. I feel moved. And at the same time, my mind would be like, no, you need to work, work, work. And one of the things I learned eventually is that when we're called to do something that we really, really love, that's really like calling our attention, it is not just important that we turn toward it. It is a necessity. It is a necessity to our unfoldment and to our expansiveness as human beings and as spiritual beings. And what I experienced is that when I finally said, okay, okay, I'm going to write, I would have everything else would kind of organize itself around me. So I would have emails coming in from clients, from new clients, from past clients. Like my business began to grow even as I was turning toward this desire on my heart, this pull on my heart. I found the self-organizing power of the universe or God or nature or whatever that is for you. That's what I experienced is that everything really kind of organized itself around me. And 2020 really taught me how to redirect my attention as I was being called. So even in the process of writing, I would hit a roadblock where I just felt like I could not, I was so frustrated. And I was like, oh my God, I just need to finish this paragraph. I need to finish this. Da, da, da. And I'd be like, wait, no, no, no. We're not doing this frustrated. If we're frustrated doing this writing right now, then it's not for us to do right now. And I would redirect and I'd say, maybe it's time to focus on the business and do something there. Or maybe it's time I spend with my kids. So I learned the power of redirection in
Well, you know,
2020.
you told me something very interesting off the air too. We were talking about your businesses, and the one business I was familiar with was the Biltmore Lake publication. And that was kind of an interesting thing because I was familiar with it. I thought it was great. I liked it when I was there. And yet you gave that up too, which is kind of tying into what you're saying that you realize that I guess you can't do everything
Mm-hmm.
simultaneously. And so how did that realization come to you? That was just too much, or was it wasn't meant to be?
That's a great question. Yeah. So yeah, the power of redirection is it ties along with this idea of stillness also in the moment is that there's no blueprint for this. Every person has an individual journey. And sometimes we can get caught up in our mind and our reasoning of like, I need to make this happen. And I was running that publication. I was running two publications, so Biltmore Lake and then also Biltmore Forest and Ramble. And among other things, and I really did struggle for a while because I mean, I had Biltmore Lake for years,
Right,
right? That was
exactly.
it was a baby. It was one of my babies. And I just thought,
Was that the first one you did, or the?
that was the
Okay,
first one here in this area. And
right.
I took it over when I moved to the area. And so yeah, I really did kind of struggle with it. And I thought, well, I'll make it happen. I will make it happen. But you know, I mean, we cause ourselves such suffering whenever we do that, whenever we try to make things happen because it wasn't going smoothly. I was not able to juggle that with the other things that I had on my plate. And so there reached a moment in time where I was like, you know what? I think I just have to let it go and be okay and let that be okay. And it was okay. And once I did, I actually had other opportunities open up and it was for the best.
I love the concept you mentioned, redirection. Do you talk about that in the book also?
Yes. Yes. Redirection. It's funny because I actually don't know that I use the word redirection for this, but what I do talk a lot about is the channels that we have in life. We have all these, it's important to recognize the channels that we have in life. So channels are our children, our work, our passions, our hobbies, our just things that are in our life that are life affirming. That means lift us up, that are loving, that offer us um, energy, like positive energy. You know, those things are really important to To
That's
acknowledge.
wait, hold on one second, Jessica.
Mhm.
Hi again. This is Blaine Greenfield with the Blaine's World webcast, and we're speaking with Jessica Ayala about her book. And Jessica, we kind of got caught off there talking about the book, Five Laws of Stillness. And I wanted to ask you, we were talking about the concept of redirection, and you said that you do address that in the book itself a little bit.
So yes, in different words, but yes. And it's the idea of stillness as a consciousness ultimately is about knowing how to redirect in the present moment. And it's acknowledging that. So one of the things that we do as humans in this life is that when we experience something in the moment that seems like an inconvenience or a challenge, it gets us all flustered. We don't know how to redirect to that. We don't know how to take a step back. We don't know how to just acknowledge that experience in the present moment. That's all it is. It's just an experience. And so adopting a philosophy of stillness as a consciousness is about being able to acknowledge the ebbs and flows of life and to not necessarily label them as good or bad, but to see them as just an experience in this present moment and being able to redirect um, or to turn toward those shifts and to really bring in what's life affirming and what's loving into the present moment.
Jessica, let me ask you this. In terms of the book, who should read it? Who do you think the book is ideal for?
I would say the book is for, I mean, on the surface, if busy moms, business owners, um, anyone who, honestly, anyone who struggles with the practice of physical stillness and is looking for something that's sustainable and a sustainable way of addressing life's challenges and getting in tune with your intuition, your inner guide. It is also for people that do meditate as a practice. I'm not here to rebuke the powerful practice of physical stillness, by the way. A physical stillness is absolutely 100% beneficial, mind, body, and spirit. But I am here because I think there is something to be said about accessing stillness in the moments where we can't be physically still, when there's chaos surrounding us. Um, and that's when we need stillness the most.
And what I love about what you said, and encouraged me to read this book as well, is that it also seemed to have helped you writing the book and sharing it with others, is the fact that you can use it to shift if you're in a position where you don't have stillness. Like you were saying before, and I've been there too often too, all craziness is happening around you. Maybe that's the time you need to think about the book and some of the five um, laws, because that's when you need it most,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it was surprising you said that because, you know, it seemed you had an epiphany at some of these times in your life when everything was going crazy, and then you all of a sudden said, somehow you stopped it. So I just give you credit. Interesting. Jessica, if folks want to get the book, I want to talk about two final things. Folks want to get the book, how do they get it?
Right now it's available on Audible. So it is on Audible and Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, you can find it on any major like book platform, Book Baby. I don't sell it through my website anymore, but you can find it on those platforms. And then it is in an audiobook form on Audible.
And talk also, you mentioned your website. So folks want to get in touch with you or find out more about you. I guess the best bet is to reach you through your website.
Yes, jessicaayala.com. That's JESSICAAYALA.com. And there will be events posted there. I will do a workshop soon. So if you want to be in the know on that, you can go on and just subscribe, and I'll send out an email letting you know when that happens.
Okay. And I have to ask you one final question. So we get this first book done to your credit. Great.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next book going to be? Or are you thinking about it?
I am. I am. I
How
have
did
a,
how did I
a
guess that
really
was the
big
case?
idea. Hmm?
So how did I guess that was the case? You're already thinking about it.
Oh,
So
yes. I was thinking about another book right after I published this one.
we really, so are you working on it yet, or that's to be?
No, I think I'm going to. I think I want to work on being present with this book first. And I think it's really important. I think it's a really important concept, and there's really great content within it. And I don't claim it to be my own. I include lots of different philosophies from various master teachers, and even back to the etymology of words in Aramaic and Hebrew, and just a great exploration. And I think it's so important for these times because it's not only about benefiting our own state of well-being, our own peace of mind, and it's also something that energetically can transform our world.
So if folks want to find out then more about not only what you're doing, but what's upcoming, best bet is to get in touch with you through the website.
Yes.
Okay. And one more time, the website.
JessicaAyala.com.
Okay. I'd like thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World website, webcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Capicetti. And hopefully we'll bump into each other one of these times, or I'll see you at one of the programs you're running, Jessica. That'd be
Sure
great.
thing.
Thanks for being my guest.